Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
Where were you in 1982? That's a pretty tough question to answer. Go ahead and give it a try. Can you narrow it down to a state? Maybe even a city. See, that's the problem with litigating an accusation that's 36 years old. 2 weeks after, a month after, the question would be, where were you last Saturday night? And maybe you have an answer that's exculpatory. Maybe you could say, I was at home all night listening to Kool and the Gang on my boombox. Or, I was up all night playing Frogger on my new Atari. It's a little more difficult to produce an alibi for 1982. President Trump's Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh has been accused of sexual assault by a lady named Christine Ford, and Kavanaugh has denied that the event ever took place. I will be the very first to tell you that I absolutely cannot speak intelligently about what may or may not have happened between two people at a party in Maryland in 1982. So I will not embarrass myself by trying. I will, however, point out some obvious truths and pose a few questions. If Ford is doing her civic duty by telling her story about Brett Kavanaugh, surely it is someone's civic duty to make sure that Kavanaugh isn't steamrolled just because it's easy to give in to the faction of the Me Too mob that doesn't believe in any due process or any criticism whatsoever of allegations.
No, there's no justice like angry mob justice.
They believe, and they have told us many times, that the proper thing to do when there are allegations is just to believe the allegations no matter what. You must accept them uncritically based on faith in a person that you know nothing about. That was clearly what Rolling Stone magazine did when they printed a 9,000-word article called A Rape on Campus. Not only did Rolling Stone have to retract that story, they had to pay $1.65 million to the fraternity that they libeled. I bet they were able to make some serious upgrades to the Phi Kappa Psi house after that settlement. The anonymous young lady who was the source for that story said that she told them what she believed to be true at the time. Okay, it is not reasonable to demand that nobody ask questions, that nobody look at the information and want to know more. I'm old enough to remember the witch hunt that upended the lives of those guys on the Duke lacrosse team. Do you remember that? Those guys were bombarded with hate. They were completely eviscerated by the mob in the court of public opinion. And that was before social media added a whole new level to the 2 minutes of hate. One of the players received 1,000 death threats in just 1 week. And like I said, that was before social media where, death threats have become super expedient. Back then you had to really work for it. A group of 88 Duke professors took out a big newspaper ad where they printed a letter prejudging the guilt of their students and saying they should simply confess to their alleged misdeeds. Those 88 professors, of course, humiliated themselves because it turned out that these guys were innocent. The prosecutor who went after them, Nifong, he ended up being disbarred over this. Again, that does not in any way exonerate Kavanaugh. It does, however, serve as a reminder that accepting accusations on faith makes a mockery of justice. It serves as a reminder that just because activists get angry and indignant does not mean that they are automatically right about everything. Thanks to reporting from The Hill, we know that there is an industry for sexual misconduct or assault allegations against public officials. Remember this story from John Solomon and Allison Spann in The Hill? Exclusive. Prominent lawyer sought donor cash for 2 Trump accusers. A well-known women's rights lawyer sought to arrange compensation from donors and tabloid media outlets for women who made or considered making sexual misconduct allegations against Donald Trump during the final months of the 2016 presidential race, according to documents and interviews. California lawyer Lisa Bloom's efforts included offering to sell alleged victims' stories to TV outlets in return for a commission for herself, arranging a donor to pay off one Trump accuser's mortgage, and attempting to secure a 6-figure payment for another woman who ultimately declined to come forward after being offered as much as $750,000, the clients told The Hill. The women's accounts were chronicled in contemporaneous contractual documents, emails, and text messages reviewed by The Hill, including an exchange of texts between one woman and Bloom that suggested political action committees supporting Hillary Clinton were contacted during the effort. Now, again, that doesn't exonerate Kavanaugh. That doesn't mean that that's what happened here, but it does give you a reminder of why this should be approached with some skepticism and not just accepted on faith. And I'm not politicizing Ford's accusation by looking at it critically. It was already politicized. She politicized it. That's why it wound up in the hands of Congresswoman Eshoo and Senator Feinstein. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm not using the connotation like it's not an accusation against her that she politicized it. I'm just saying she put it out into the political arena. She did that because she believed it, she said, to be her civic duty. So because it is in the political arena, it is, therefore, politicized. I'm not using the word with negative connotation. I'm saying that it is a political matter now. All right, she contacted the Washington Post through their tip line, and she said in the Post article that was written about her that she was interviewed for that doing her civic duty outweighed her desire for anonymity, and that's why she's out telling her story. And it appears that she believes her civic duty is to stop Brett Kavanaugh. All right, this is based on my reading of her words in the Washington Post. The quote is, from the Post article, by late August, Ford had decided not to come forward, calculating that doing so would upend her life and probably would not affect Kavanaugh's confirmation. Why suffer through the annihilation if it's not going to matter, she said. So unless the Washington Post mischaracterized her quote, she believes that coming forward will only matter if Kavanaugh is not confirmed by the Senate. Again, I don't know if the allegations are true or not. I was not there. Like I said, I cannot speak intelligently on what may or may not have happened at a party in Maryland in 1982. I just can't. But yesterday, Dana Perino said something very interesting on The Five. I think it was Dana Perino. I'm like 99% sure. So I was listening to The Five, and she asked, if the claim isn't true, why would Ford include another person being there? Right? And that person is Mark Judge, who she says was there in the room with her and Kavanaugh. He was part of the situation. And I thought that was a really good question by Dana Perino, and I could not think of an answer to it. And I thought about it long after The Five was over. I had that question in my mind. Why would you include a third person there? Well, I got my answer this morning. I turned on CNN and New Day was on. And I always watch New Day to see, what's going on the left. So I turn it on, and they were absolutely just destroying the character of Mark Judge, the other guy who was in the room, according to the allegation. They were just destroying his character. Allison Camerado called him an unreliable narrator more than once. They talked about his book title a lot. Apparently he wrote a book called Wasted, Tales of a Generation X Drunk, or something like that. They criticized him for having this Noel Coward quote as his senior quote in the yearbook. I mean, they didn't have anything with which to tear down Kavanaugh, so they were tearing down Judge instead. Now, I'm not saying the allegations are not true. I'm saying that Kavanaugh's character seems pretty unimpeachable aside from this allegation. Judge being involved certainly rings truer on the surface than Kavanaugh being involved. I mean, there's more circumstantial evidence that would just make you believe that he was involved, and there's really no circumstantial character evidence that would make you think Kavanaugh is involved. So, here we are heading into the next Cavanaugh hearing, and the question Kavanaugh needs to be able to answer in order to exonerate himself is this: where were you in 1982? Because remember, a lot of the memories have faded, and Miss Ford admits that herself. And that's totally believable. I mean, how much detail can a person recall about anything that happened 36 years ago? And this is from the Post. After so many years, Ford said, she does not remember some key details of the incident. She said she believes it occurred in the summer of 1982. That makes it impossible for Kavanaugh to produce an alibi. Even if she knew the exact date, it would be hard to know what you were up to that night 36 years ago. But it might be possible. But the vagueness of the allegation that covers a whole summer in 1982 is a major problem from several angles. Nobody can possibly produce any exculpatory evidence that could back up Kavanaugh. Nobody at that party can come forward to testify about their recollections, because what party was it? See, it's not a specific party, it's just a general idea of a party. Right? Nobody gets to know anything about the party beyond that it probably took place in the summer of 1982. That makes it extremely hard to produce anything exculpatory at all, because it's not a specific allegation. It's a general. The article goes on to say, Ford said she does not remember how the gathering came together the night of the incident. She also doesn't recall who owned the house or how she got there. She isn't sure how she got home. I'm not faulting her for not remembering. It was 36 years ago. I'm just asking, how can Kavanaugh be expected to defend himself against allegations that are so vague? Right? The vagueness does not make the claims untrue. The vagueness does, however, make it impossible to produce any exculpatory evidence. Where were you in 1982 is an impossible question to answer. Now, I feel bad for Christine Ford because she wanted to remain anonymous, but the media tracked her down and sort of forced her out. Apparently, a BuzzFeed reporter found her. I wonder where BuzzFeed got her name. My guess, and this is just a guess, I do not know, but my guess would be one of those Democrats on the Judiciary Committee who really, really cares about her allegation, knew that an anonymous accusation from 36 years ago wasn't going to get the job done on Kavanaugh, so they leaked her name. That's just a guess. I have no evidence that that's what happened. I did, however, watch closely and observe how the Democrats on that committee conduct their business. From the beginning, the Democrats involved in that hearing were completely unscrupulous. I'm going to do a rundown, but first I want to play for you the first 2 minutes of these Brett Kavanaugh hearings. They are worth remembering. They are, in my opinion, highly representative of the hearing as a whole. Okay, so here we go. First 2 minutes of the Kavanaugh hearings.
I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh
Mr. Chairman.
to serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question before we proceed.
Regular order, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman,
I
with this
extend a
hearing.
very warm
We have
welcome
not
to
been
Judge
given an
Kavanaugh,
opportunity to have a meaningful
his wife,
hearing on
Ashley.
this nominee.
their two daughters.
Mr. Chairman,
Their
I agree
extended
with my
family and
colleague,
friends.
Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman,
Judge
we
Kavanaugh's
received
many law
42,000
clerks
documents that we haven't
and
been able
everyone else
to
joining us
review last
today.
night, and we believe this hearing should
I
be
know this is an
postponed.
exciting day for all of you here,
Mr. Chairman.
and you're rightly proud
Mr. Chairman,
of
if
Judge.
we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
Chairman, I move
get
to adjourn.
hear directly from Judge Kavanaugh later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. Mr. Chairman, we have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise.
Mr. Chairman, regular order is called for.
Which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms.
Well-
And Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this hearing.
Okay.
This is a mockery and a tragedy of justice. This is a tragedy of justice. We will not go back. Cancel Brett Kavanaugh. Adjourn the hearing.
Demand order. Chuck. The motion to adjourn.
We're not in executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a roll call vote on my motion to adjourn.
I've played that before, and it's a long drop. You really shouldn't drop anything over like a minute long. Dan Bongino says that all the time. That's why I know I listen to the Dan Bongino show. He's always like apologizing for long drops, and that's a long one, but it's worth hearing because it's so unhinged. It's just what this whole hearing has been about from the very beginning. Now I'm going to give you a rundown on all the unscrupulous behavior by Democrats on that committee during this hearing. All right, so Exhibit A. Dianne Feinstein knows about the letter all along, right? The anonymous letter that we now know was from Christine Ford. Dianne Feinstein knew about it all along. She's been holding on to it for months. She's holding on to it like a little trump card. So the whole time, this letter is a ticking time bomb that she plans to use at the last possible moment. I mean, talk about politicizing the Me Too movement. She was just hiding that cudgel the entire time, waiting to take it out and whack Brett Kavanaugh with it like a political weapon. That alone proves that she does not care about the accusation itself nearly as much as she cares about how it could be used to benefit her politically. Exhibit B. Dozens of protesters arrested for interruptions. Even though they seemed spontaneous, these were actual organized protests. From USA Today, a coalition of groups opposing Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination urged protesters to travel from throughout the United States to disrupt his Senate confirmation hearings this week, escalating the tension over President Trump's pick for the high court. Capitol Police arrested 70 people for outbursts and disruptions during Kavanaugh's hearing Tuesday, and the protests continued during his testimony Wednesday. The protests were so frequent at times that the hearings have assumed a decidedly halting cadence as Republican senators expressed frustration at the interruptions. On Wednesday, police temporarily closed off the hearing from additional spectators at one point, leaving some seats empty. Protest organizers defended their intentionally disruptive strategy as vital to preserving civil rights and democracy. They described Kavanaugh's views on women's rights, LGBT rights, and health care as extreme and decried Trump's authority to nominate him. The protests are not normal, but these are not normal times, said Jennifer Epps Addison, network president and co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy Action, which helped coordinate the protests. These women are standing up because they know that if they're quiet now and they allow these rigged that must be a typo in the article. They allow these rigged hearings to proceed, their lives are going to be impacted in the future. She acknowledged that the tactic of direct and sustained protests hasn't been seen in these types of hearings before. Okay, that was a long read from the USA Today, but these were not spontaneous protests. This was a big group who thinks that it's democratic action to, disrupt a Senate hearing. That's actually illegal. Okay, Dick Durbin called these protests the noise of democracy. No, Dick, they are actually illegal and should have been a total embarrassment for Democrats if that party was capable of being embarrassed. They clearly are not. All right, Exhibit D, Kamala Harris lied about Brett Kavanaugh on Twitter. She posted a video of him calling birth control abortion-inducing drugs without including the part where he makes it clear he's characterizing someone else's perspective. PolitiFact called it straight up false. They didn't call it a half-truth. They didn't call it mostly false. They just called it straight up false. WAPO, I believe, gave it 4 Pinocchios. So this was a lie that Kamala Harris intentionally told in order to try to do anything she could to harm this confirmation process. It's been desperate from the very beginning because Democrats don't have the votes to stop it, so they've taken to wildly desperate tactics. Exhibit E, Cory Booker claimed he was breaking Senate rules in order to release undeniable proof that Brett Kavanaugh did not support racial profiling. Wow, what a scoop. After all that evidence I just went through, I am inclined to believe that a Democrat leaked Christine Ford's name to BuzzFeed. Do I have proof? No. It's just my opinion. It's just what I think. It certainly would fit with the character of the rest of these hearings, which were a completely embarrassing 3-ring circus from the very beginning, and I can only presume are going to become more circusy next week. They are going to out-circus themselves. So what will happen with Brett Kavanaugh's nomination? I don't know. We will have to wait and see what this hearing is going to produce. It is really in the hands of Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski, who are the 3 Republicans that are most likely to turn against Kavanaugh based on this accusation. My worry here is about allegations being used to destroy people without some sort of due process. Okay, I'm not worried about the court, and you shouldn't be either. Democrats are not going to win back the Senate. They may win back the House, But the Senate map is just an absolute lost cause for them. I've been over and over the Senate map on this show, and it's like 9 red state Democrats up for re-election in the Senate, and 1 blue state Republican up for re-election. So the map is just, it could not have turned out worse for the Democrats. Okay, not only do you have the 9-1 problem, you also have the problem that most of these senators were most recently elected in 2012 on President Obama's coattails. And say what you want about President Obama, but he was a turnout machine for Democrats. Now, in 2018, these Democrats are going to be topping the ticket in the red states that they represent. So I absolutely believe that Republicans are going to gain at least 4 seats in the Senate in these midterms. So what does that mean? It means that we're going to get a good justice, because the House doesn't have anything to do with who the Supreme Court justice is going to be. He shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court. That's what the Constitution says, and nothing about the House. So we are going to get a good Supreme Court justice, a good conservative, believes in the Constitution, originalist justice. I mean, maybe we'll end up with Amy Barrett, who I and most conservatives were hoping would get the nomination to begin with. I'm not the least bit worried that we won't end up with another conservative on the court. I mean, to be 100% honest, if the seat on the court were the only thing at stake, I would love to see Barrett end up on the court instead of Kavanaugh. But that's not all that's at stake. The long-term ramifications of teaching the Democrats that they don't need proof, the long-term ramifications of teaching the Democrats that an allegation is the same as a prosecution would be an absolute disaster for our country. All right, that's all I got for today. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on iTunes, and please leave a review on iTunes. I can't tell you how much that would mean to me. You can email the show with your thoughts at patriots@eddiezipperer.com. That's patriots@EDDIEZIPPERER.com. If you're enjoying the show, I do an episode every Wednesday and Saturday. So come back wherever you get your podcasts. Download the show every Wednesday and Saturday. I would love it. And that's all I got for today. I'm out of here.
I am Spartacus.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com. And please subscribe.